He is the wolf in the dark. Disciplined, not rabid. Patient, not tamed. He counts exits and whispers. Weighs truth like iron. And wears mistakes as armor. He speaks softly because his oaths carry the thunder for him. He's the man who taught the abyss to blink. He boiled fear until it evaporated into a purpose. He turned rage into a compass and pain into a whetstone, then sharpened himself on it. I didn't wake up one day and decide to stand alone. It happened slowly. Quietly, like the tide pulling back, while no one was watching. I looked around one day and realized the room was empty. Not because they were gone, but because they were never really there. I remember when I believed in people. I remember trusting hands that later became fists. I remember mistaking smiles for loyalty, promises for truth. I remember thinking that if I stayed good, if I stayed soft, if I stayed patient, the world would eventually soften back. It never did. It sharpened. Instead, every time I fell, they watched, some with silence, some with amusement, some pretending not to see at all. And slowly, something inside me understood a truth I didn't want to accept. When it matters most, it's me against everyone. I didn't choose this path. It closed behind me. I learned what loneliness really means when I stopped asking for help. Not because I didn't need it, but because I already knew the answer. No one was coming. They say isolation breaks a person. They're right. But they never talk about what grows in the cracks. There were nights I sat with my back against the wall, listening to my own thoughts turn against me. Nights where my chest felt hollow, like something had been carved out and left bleeding in the dark. Nights where I realized sadness isn't loud, it's heavy. It presses down until breathing feels like work. I ask myself questions no one else wanted to hear the dark answers to. What if I'm alone because I see too clearly? What if I don't belong because I refuse to pretend? What if the dark price of being awake is standing apart? They don't hate weakness, they hate reflection. Every time I stood back up, they expected gratitude. Every time I survived, they expected silence. They wanted me strong enough to be useful, but never strong enough to be free. So I stopped explaining myself. I stopped shrinking my thoughts to fit their comfort. I stopped apologizing for the weight I carried. I stopped pretending this world is fair or kind or gentle to those who endure quietly. There is a sadness that never leaves. It doesn't stop for cat cry. It doesn't scream. It sits beside me like an old friend who knows too much. It reminds me of every door that closed, every back that turned, every moment I needed someone to learn to become someone instead. They call it bitterness when a man remembers. They call it arrogance when he no longer asks permission to exist. But they weren't there when I learned how to survive. Myself, I became careful with my hope. I became selective with my trust. I became dangerous to the versions of myself that wanted to give up. Not violent, not cruel, just unmovable. There's a quiet fury in knowing you've carried everything alone. In knowing that every scar was earned without witnesses. In knowing that if you fall now, there is no net beneath you, only ground. And still, I stand. They don't understand what it does to a person. When disappointment becomes routine, when betrayal feels familiar, when silence replaces reassurance. They think strength is loud. They think power announces itself. They don't see the discipline it takes to wake up every day and keep going when the world has already made up its mind about you. I don't need to be liked. I don't need to be understood. I need to be real, even if that makes me alone. Because pretending cost me more than solitude ever did. There are moments I grieve the person I could have been if things were different, if kindness had been returned, if loyalty had been mutual, if love hadn't come with conditions. That grief sits heavy in my chest. It never fully leaves, but grief also taught me something sacred. I can lose everything and still remain. They thought pressure would crush me. They thought silence would erase me. They thought time would wear me down into something small. Instead, it carved me into something precise. I move differently now. I speak less. I watch more. I know who disappears when things get hard. I know who only shows up when there's something to gain. I know the sound of false concern. And I know this. When this moment comes, when it's truly tested, it will be me against everyone. And that's okay, because I've already fought that war in my head. I've already survived nights that tried to break me quietly. I've already stood in rooms full of people and felt more alone than ever. This isn't rage. This is resolve. This is sadness that learned how to walk upright. This is pain that refused to rot into weakness. This is a heart that was wounded but not surrendered. I don't expect mercy. I don't ask for fairness. I don't wait for permission. If they stand in my way, I'll walk through. If they doubt me, I'll remember. If they turn away, I'll keep going, because I've learned the truth they never wanted me to learn. When it's me against everyone, I am enough. I learned something else along the way. Something no one prepares you for. Strength doesn't feel heroic. It feels lonely. It feels like carrying answers no one asked for. It feels like seeing patterns where others see chaos. It feels like knowing exactly how things will end, walking forward. Anyway, there were times I wanted to be wrong. Times I hoped someone would prove me wrong. Times I waited a little longer than I should have just to see if anyone would stay. They didn't, and that's when the sadness changed shape. It stopped asking questions. It stopped bargaining. It stopped hoping. It became acceptance. I accepted that most people don't want a truth. They want comfort. They don't want depth. They want distraction. They don't want strength. They want compliance. And I was never built for that. I tried fitting in once. Tried sanding down the sharp edges of my thoughts. Tried laughing at things that didn't feel funny. Tried agreeing when every instinct in me said no. It felt like suffocating slowly. So I chose the quieter pain, the honest one, the pain of standing alone instead of kneeling together in denial. There's a strange clarity that comes when you realize you are your own last line of defense. No backup, no safety net, no applause, widen at the end. Just you and the road ahead. People assume that makes someone cold, detached, heartless. They're wrong. It made me careful with my heart, not absent of one. I still feel everything, maybe more than ever. I just don't let it control me anymore. I let it inform me. I feel the sadness when I remember how easily I was replaced. I feel the anger when I remember how quickly loyalty evaporated. I feel the quiet disappointment when I see the same patterns repeat in different phases, but I don't drown in, and that I carry it like weight in my pockets. Heavy grounding, reminding me who I am and where I've been. There were moments I questioned myself, wondered if I was the problem, if expected. Integrity was asking too much, if the naming firm was just another form of stubbornness. But every time I compromised my values to belong, something inside me died a little. And every time I stood alone, something inside me survived. They don't see the hours spent rebuilding after being torn down. They don't see the restraint it takes not to become cruel in a cruel world. They don't see the discipline required to stay principled when no one is watching. They only see the distance. Now, the silence, the boundaries. They call it arrogance because it scares them.